What's going on, guys, and welcome to my 2023 Canadian Grand Prix driver tier list for of course, the F1 Formula 1 2023 Canadian Grand Prix. So let's get started. First of all, with an easy one. It's Alexander Albon, and it is easily an S. Driver of the weekend for me, for sure. I can't remember exactly where he started. Did he? I think he did. No, he did. He definitely did get through to Q3, didn't he? Because he set the quickest time in Q2, which was crazy. And then, finished P7 in the race. That Williams was so difficult to overtake because it was just so quick in a straight line. Perfect setup by Williams, perfect strategy by Williams, and just perfect defensive driving from Alexander Albon. He is easily my driver of the day. Picks up 6 points in the Drivers' and Constructors' Championship for himself and Williams this time around, which is only Williams' second point scoring position, but that at the moment fairly firmly puts them ahead of AlphaTauri. They're only on, I think, 2 points, and then I think it's Williams then ninth with, I think, 7 points, then it's Haas with 8, and then is it Alfa Romeo with 9 or something like that? So it's really close. Kind of that bottom 4 teams is really close, especially kind of 9 to 7. So great points for him. He did such a good job. Couldn't have done any more, so it's an easy S. Fernando Alonso, he finished P2 in the end. Said he had the pace to win, but in the end they had to fuel manage. I'm going to give him an A because, firstly, I think Verstappen was taking it easy in the Red Bull. Yes, he did make a little bit of a mistake at one point, but I think honestly he was just so off somewhere completely different because, he just didn't have to think about anything, that he just slightly had a mislapse of thought and went off. So I think he was just absolutely cruising out there. So I don't think Alonso could have really won anyway. And he did lose the position to... He didn't have a great start, lost position to Hamilton at the start, almost lost position to Russell as well. Did make the position back on Hamilton though. So I'm going to give him an A just because, I think that's about right. I've been giving him a lot of S's, so this is kind of becoming the norm for Alonso now. So it's kind of the maximum he can do, but at the same time, I can't just constantly keep giving him an S. So if he does make a little mistake here and there, I've got to drop it down to an A. So that's what I'm going to do. Valtteri Bottas finally had a good weekend, finished P10 in the end, literally got beaten by Stroll on the line. The finishing times here, Bottas was, 300ths of a second behind Stroll. He got overtaken right on the line, but that was really good from Bottas. I can't remember where he qualified, but from what I remember, I'm pretty sure he got into Q2 and then just made it work in the race. Considering where he's been previously and considering his teammate finished P16, quite a way behind, I think that's a really good result for Bottas. So I'm going to give him... I'm tempted by an A for Bottas as well. It's not as good as Alonso though. No, I think a B. I think I'm going to put Bottas in a B. Pretty good. Finally, a good weekend for him. Scored 1 point, almost so nearly 2 points. But I think that was good from Bottas. Next up, yes. We've got Nick De Vries. What to say about De Vries? He was looking decent at the start of the race, got in that battle with Magnussen, and then I think Magnussen was a little bit optimistic, a little bit too, it was a bit of a risk for Magnussen to try and go around the outside through turn 1, turn 2, but he did have the right to be there. De Vries pretty much bullied him onto the curb. They then stayed side by side through turn 2, came to turn 3, and De Vries outbroke himself and pushed them both off into the runoff. So once again, I think it's another pretty terrible weekend for De Vries. I think he was wholly at fault. I'm surprised he didn't get a penalty, actually. I mean, I know that in the end, Magnussen did end up, De Vries was technically ahead, but he kind of locked up just as he was ahead, and then Magnussen couldn't turn in, so there's nothing Magnussen could have done. And I just think it was another poor weekend from De Vries, so it's another E. He's by far for me the worst driver so far this season. I know Sargent's not been doing great, and we'll get to him soon, but De Vries has a lot more experience just in general, even in F1, because he's got that extra one race, and I just don't think he's doing what he should be doing at all. I'd be very surprised if he keeps his seats at the end of this season. Pierre Gasly had the unluckiest weekend of his life. Definitely had the pace to get through Q2 and probably Q3 as well. Apparently his time was going to be good enough for like P6, but got screwed over, got blocked by Sainz in Q1 and then couldn't set another time, got knocked out, and then I think he then missed. I think they pitted him before the safety car, the lap before the safety car in the race, so that screwed him over as well. Ended up finishing P12 though, so he did at least move his way up a little bit, but it still wasn't great, but not really his fault. So I think because of that, I'm just going to give him a C, because nothing that happened was his fault. He just got screwed over in every single possible way that he could, pretty much. So I think it's got to be a C. What could have been for Gasly? Hamilton, of course, finished P3. Yeah, I think just because he did end up finishing quite a way behind Alonso at the end, and Alonso was fuel saving. We didn't hear that Hamilton was. Maybe they just didn't quite have the pace. He did get the jump on Alonso at the start, but I still think I've got to give him the same grade as Alonso, so it's an A for Hamilton as well. Those two great battles this weekend. It's good to see them racing each other at the top, even though Verstappen is way, way ahead of him. Nico Hülkenberg, what could have been for him as well? It was P2 in qualifying. Got then a penalty for a red flag infringement, dropped him to P5, dropped way back at the start of the race, and then was absolutely nowhere. That Haas had no pace in the end. It was P15 for Hülkenberg. Yeah, just not. The Haas is just bad. The Haas was just a bad car. So yeah, I think a C. I don't think I can give him worse than a C. And I could almost give him a B because of qualifying, but I do also think that he was quite lucky with when he put his times in as well. So, yeah, I think, yeah, I can't justify giving him a B for finishing P15 in the race, I don't think. So I think it's got to be a C. Charles Leclerc had a terrible qualifying, P11, didn't get through to Q3 for the third race in a row. That is just crazy. But made it up in the race, ended up finishing P4. It's just unfortunate because the Ferraris actually looked like probably the second quickest car today. I think if they qualified where they should have and had a good race, they could have quite easily been second and third, the two Ferraris, because, I mean, Leclerc was only, 4.5 seconds behind Hamilton at the end, so it was pretty decent. So I think because of that, I think I'm going to give him a B because, you know, there was good pace in that Ferrari. Leclerc did what he had to do in the race, but yeah, unfortunately qualifying didn't go his way. Kevin Magnussen, of course, he had a bad qualifying. I'm pretty sure he was out in Q1. Maybe he got through to Q2, I can't quite remember, but then just had no pace at the end. He was, like I said, he was battling with De Vries, and I think just because I've put Hülkenberg in C, I think I'm going to have to put Magnussen in D. The issues with De Vries weren't really Magnussen's fault, but one, he was fighting with De Vries in the first place, which, yeah, I mean, I guess the Haas on race pace isn't great, but that AlphaTauri is terrible, and De Vries especially is nowhere. So for him to be battling with him in the first place, and because Hülkenberg did have that good qualifying, I'm just going to have to give Magnussen a D. Lando Norris, a strange weekend for him, finished P13, qualified, I can't remember where, was it P9 or something? I can't quite remember. I think he got into Q3. I think both McLarens got into Q3, didn't they? But then, of course, got a penalty in the race because he was backing up the field, supposedly. But then he was making up a lot of places as well in those DRS trains where nobody else was making places, and Lando Norris was doing it. So I think if he didn't get the penalty, it would be an A. But I think because of the penalty, it's got to be a B. Whether that was him or whether that was the team telling him to do that, I don't know. But he got the penalty. And yeah, he couldn't quite push far enough away to finish ahead of his teammate and in the points, but he did make some great moves in this race, so could have been a great one for Lando. Esteban Ocon, the other Alpine driver, finished P8 in the end. Yeah, decent weekend from Ocon. Finished behind the Williams because I guess just couldn't get past him, so had a better weekend than Gasly, I guess, but I don't think he had the pace of Gasly this weekend, but Gasly got screwed over. He did still finish P8 in the race, though, so I think maybe it's a B. I think putting him in C is a bit too harsh. So yeah, I think a B for Ocon. Sergio Perez finished P6. Now, where was Perez? Where was Perez this weekend? Once again, he was absolutely nowhere. Yeah, really, really bad actually. Not getting through to Q3, but he was P12, I think, in Q2, and then only made it to P6 in the race, with Russell retiring as well. That's not good enough. That's really not good enough. I almost want to give him an F, but he didn't like crash out after being really slow. So do I want to give him an E to be a bit more lenient? No, I'm going to give him an F. I'm going to give Perez an F because we know how good that Red Bull is. Yes, maybe it didn't look as quick this weekend as everybody else, but I think that was more just Max not pushing really super hard. I think there was way more pace in that car. And yeah, for Perez to be knocked out of Q3, in one case, not even going through to Q2, sorry, 3 times in a row is not good enough. And then he didn't make the positions up in the race that he should have. So yeah, it's an F. It's an F for Perez, I'm sorry. Oscar Piastri finished P11, so close to points for him. Of course, gained the position because of his teammate getting the penalty, but he was right behind Bottas and Stroll at the end. Couldn't quite get the points though, but I think I'm still going to give Piastri a B. It was a good performance by him. He was actually, apart from Norris making those moves in the DRS train, he was pretty much on Norris's pace this weekend, almost there. So yeah, really good from Oscar. George Russell, yeah, he was looking good at the start, but he made a mistake, went into the wall. Car kept going, but then he had issues with the brakes or something, brake duct, something or other in the brake ducts. And that was, from what I can tell, part of the reason. It was his crash that made that happen. So, I mean, it was his fault, the crash. I think I've got to give him an E because that crash ultimately did cost him his race, but I still don't think it's as bad as Perez because, his pace was good. He just made a little mistake. Carlos Sainz finished P5, a couple of seconds behind his teammate, but all in all, a pretty good weekend from Sainz, actually. He was pretty much on pace with Leclerc this weekend, beat him in qualifying, actually got through to Q3, but they're in the race. Leclerc did seem to have the edge, but yeah, it was still a good weekend from Carlos, so I think it's an easy B from him. Logan Sargent did not finish the race, issue in the race right at the start, and had to pull over and retire the car very early on. Yeah, there's not really much I can say. I think considering where his teammate was and where he was in qualifying, I'm going to give him a D. Usually I'd give a C to a car that retires, especially that early, but he beat Zhou in qualifying, but Zhou had issues in qualifying, so that's not really saying much, and yeah, was not on the pace of his teammate, but I think a D is about all I can do for Sargent. Lance Stroll, like I said, finished P9, just ahead of Bottas on the line, but ultimately was knocked out in Q2 once again, and did not have the pace of his teammate at all once again. So because of that, I think it's D, maybe an E, but I'm a bit more lenient on Stroll compared to Perez. So I think a D. Yeah, I think he did get in the points at least. Yuki Tsunoda finished P14. Not a great one from Tsunoda, but once again, not the best race pace for the AlphaTauri. I think it's a pretty easy C for him. Max Verstappen, he did have that one issue where he hit the curb, but I mean, I think he was just cruising at the front, so I can't really give him anything but an S. And then Zhou Guanyu, finished P15, had issues in qualifying, and then just didn't quite have the pace in the race either. So I think maybe a D for him. That wasn't really his fault though, was it? But he definitely didn't have the pace of his teammate in the race, so maybe a C, because he did have an issue in qualifying. Although they did get the car back out, so no, I'm going to go D. I'm going to go D for Zhou Guanyu. Yeah, not really a lot to say about him. Just got beaten by Bottas, this weekend. But anyway, that's it for my driver tier list for the 2023 Canadian Grand Prix. Thank you guys very much for watching. If you enjoyed, please go ahead, like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.